Hi everyone, today is Sunday, June 8th, and this morning I spent a little bit more than 5 hours, almost 5.5 hours watching the men's singles final for the French Open between Yannick Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, and it was really intense, especially at some point almost at the end of the third set. There was a potential championship points against Alcaraz, and somehow he saved those points and then managed to win the third set, and then get the fourth set, and then push it to a 5-set match, and then finally the end was a tie break, and it set a record for the longest final for the French Open for the men's singles, and it reminded me of many matches, competitive matches between Nadal and Federer back almost 20 years ago, and I specifically remember a Wimbledon, really exciting Wimbledon final between Nadal and Federer, when Federer had match points against Nadal, and he managed to save those championship points. Then there was a rain break, and somehow after the game resumed, Nadal was able to come back and win the final, which is essentially what Alcaraz was able to do today. And it was also a bit moving, some of the words he said to say that, Sinner obviously was looking disappointed of getting so close, having championship points, but then watching a comeback little by little. Just the intensity was there throughout the whole game, but the words of encouragement to say that, yeah, he's inspiring as a fellow player, and so I was just writing for the email for Monday to say that it's very inspiring when there are friendly rivalries. I mean, maybe in the moment, yes, there's a very high competition, and each one wants to win, and somehow, like, these are also comments that I've heard between Federer and Nadal, where having such high level of competition makes everybody a better player. In language learning, I would say we have a tendency to compare ourselves to other learners, and we make quick assumptions based on numbers, like, oh, I've been learning for 5 years, but a number like 5 and a year, it's very subjective to know, like, well, how is somebody spending that time, or what kind of effort are they making? What's the quality of that time being spent? Because also students ask me all the time, how long is it going to take to reach a certain level? And I always mention something like a navigation tool, where on like Google Maps, we have a point of origin, a point of destination, and I would say that point of origin, like, it's important to take some kind of a evaluation or some kind of a level test to figure out where you are now. And oftentimes, like, if it's a map, then we'd say, okay, all roads lead to Rome. And if we have certain levels, we have characteristics of, like, what is a B1, what's a B2, what's a C1, or on an exam like the TOEFL, like, what is a 90, what's a 100. Yet the next question of how long is it going to take, or what's the kind of the quality of the intensity, because then if you take that distance between those 2 points, you still have to determine, like, some kind of a speed or intensity. So does that mean you're going to go walking, riding a bicycle, taking a car, taking a bus, taking a train, taking an airplane? So figuring out for yourself what is the equivalent of walking. And that would be very casually, little by little. You'd have limited speed. There's only so much you can walk or run in a day. Then if you start including things like a bicycle or some means of transportation, like a bicycle, a car, a motorcycle, a bus, then you are able to leverage other things about the learning, and you could maybe accelerate the learning. But many students, when I mentioned those things, they seem to be a little stuck, like a deer in headlights, kind of like, what do you mean? That, like, can't you just give me a simple answer that it's going to take, I don't know, 2 hours a week, 8 hours a month, or it's going to take 3 months, it's going to take 6 months. And I mean, 1 hour of a class or 2 hours of class, compared to 168 hours in a week. I mean, if you take away 8 hours of sleep and perhaps about 8 hours of work, you end up getting left with a couple hours aside from, eating and taking care of certain activities, but you get left with about 3 to 4 hours each day of free time. And the idea is like, well, how do you apply that time, or how do you combine activities like driving and listening, or walking and listening, or doing dishes and listening to something, or reviewing something, or putting some post-it notes, or putting a text on the refrigerator or on a mirror, or instead of reaching for the cell phone, and reach for a book, or do some exercises. So those kinds of efforts, they add up, and they also take up headspace in terms of like using the language. So that quality of the time really does make a difference. And some people don't necessarily take responsibility for that intrinsic motivation. They are very much dependent on the external, the extrinsic motivation, or stress, or guidance from an external source, and they don't really kind of reflect enough on how do you get that intrinsic motivation turned on, and then that's like a huge fire that can keep the flames going. So those are things in terms of like competition, because we don't know somebody else's journey, and we might see like the tip of the iceberg and what's underneath the surface, and we might be looking at somebody a couple years ahead on their journey, and they've learned things that we haven't yet experienced, but we can take inspiration from that. And so that's some things I've been looking at, reflecting on today after the final. Hola a todos, hoy es domingo, el 8 de junio, y estoy reflexionando después de haber visto la final varonil de la abierta francesa en París. Y esto era un récord de más de 5 horas y en 5 sets. Y era muy, muy intensa, porque al final del tercer set hubo una posibilidad de ganar, pero el otro, Alcaraz, logró salvarse y ganar el tercer set, luego el cuarto set, y llegar a un tiebreak de un quinto set, e incluso el quinto set con tiebreak. Y estos últimos puntos pues eran más a favor de él, y aún así, como ganando, tuvo bonitas palabras de admiración y para agradecer su adversario, y es inspirante de escuchar eso, y admitir que en muchos círculos o muchas actividades hay una competencia o hay inspiración para hacer lo mejor que podemos, y eso estoy reflexionando de cómo podemos mejorar nuestras habilidades y sin compararnos forzosamente a los otros, pero como compararnos a nosotros mismos y ver nuestro progreso poco a poco y tomar inspiración de otras personas. Bonjour tout le monde, aujourd'hui c'est dimanche, c'est le 8 juin, et aujourd'hui, ce matin, j'étais en train de regarder la finale à Roland Garros entre Yannick Sinner et Carlos Alcaraz, et c'était très intense parce que à la fin du troisième set, il y avait une possibilité de gagner mais finalement, Alcaraz s'est sauvé et il a réussi à gagner le quatrième set aussi et faire que le match arrive à une cinquième set. Et à la fin du cinquième set, il y avait enfin un tie-break. Et c'est lui qui a emporté le championnat. Et c'était très inspirant parce que je me rappelais aussi d'une finale épique entre Nadal et Federer il y a 20 ans à Wimbledon, quand Federer avait des points de match contre Nadal et Nadal a réussi à se sauver et puis gagner une quatrième set et arriver à une cinquième et gagner. Donc c'était vraiment contourner la situation et donc c'est aussi une inspiration de ne jamais se laisser battre. Il y a toujours un petit peu d'espoir de se sauver et d'atteindre plus loin son but. Et je réfléchis aussi sur l'admiration entre les adversaires et de prendre l'inspiration parmi tout le monde et ça motive tout le monde à faire son mieux. Donc je réfléchis sur ça. Hallo an alle, heute ist der 8. Juni und heute Morgen habe ich der Tennis in Paris gesehen und es war mehr als 5 Stunden und ich habe Erinnerungen an ein Spiel zwischen Federer und Nadal. Es gibt 20 Jahre im Wimbledon, als Federer könnte vielleicht gewinnen, aber Nadal hat to save einigen Punkten und danach mit mehr Zeit und er hat der Championship gewinnt und es ist ein klassisches Spiel und jetzt heute ist anderer gespielt, die diese gleiche Turnaround und ich denke für die Fremdsprachen wir lernen und vielleicht wir denken an wie viele Zeit müssen wir studieren und lernen und ich denke, dass es ist auch die Qualität mit dieser Zeit und aber es gibt viele Inspiration, wenn lernen wir zusammen und wir möchten besser sein. Das ist alles für heute. Ciao a tutti, oggi è domenica il 8 giugno e questa mattina ho passato più di 5 ore per vedere il tennis in Parigi. Mi è piaciuto molto questo gioco e ho ricordato un po' un gioco di Wimbledon entre Nadal e Federer, quando Federer avevo potuto ganare, ma Nadal ha continuato a giocare molto bene e ha ganato il set 3 dopo 4 e dopo 5 e è una gran ispirazione per vedere che è sempre importante avere ottimismo e oggi ho visto questo e penso che questo è un gioco di ispirazione e per imparare le lingue anche di sempre avere ispirazione, motivazione, disciplina e ottimismo. Questo è tutto per oggi. Всем привет! Сегодня воскресенье, и это 8 июня. И сегодня утром я посмотрел теннис в Париже, и мне нравилось много эта игра. И я помню, когда я увидел матч между Надал и Фederер 20 лет назад, когда Фederер может быть, хотел выиграть, но Надал продолжал играть хорошо, и это он, который выиграл матч. И сегодня это слушался еще раз, и я вижу много инспирации, чтобы продолжать и не закончить, и иметь оптимизм, и это очень возможно. И так, это все на сегодня. Большое спасибо, пока.